Buying or selling a home is one of the most important decisions you'll make in your entire life. Call the Holly Ritchie team today for a free market analysis.
Hi everyone, welcome to Spanning the Needs, the stories of a lifetime. Glad of you to join us. My name is Anthony Spano, and I'm here with Tom McCabe, the chair of the Republican Party from Mahoning County. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you. We've been talking about doing stuff for a little while, so I'm glad this worked out today.
Yeah, and we've been going back and forth, and especially with everything going on here in the next month or so, coming to election, and we know this is not a presidential election. This is the midterms. However, we still have very important races in the Mahoning Valley as well as the state level, and we know the boundaries have been redrawn statewide, federal. No matter if we disagree or agree, they're drawn. They are. And you've been the chair for about 3 years, since I think 2019, give or take.
Yeah, it's my first full term. I was just elected to in June, but I took over for the last 2 years of Mark Monroe. About 2019.
Yeah, and we look at a variety of different things. Like we had the pandemic, which I think probably changed the way we did a lot of different things.
It did. It did, especially when it came to political events and hosting events. But it didn't slow us down much, actually. We kind of just barreled through the pandemic, and we noticed that we were the only fundraisers in town. So we actually did very well in 2020 because of COVID.
And we look at that. Just give us a little bit of background about you. How long have you kind of been a part of the party, and kind of like how you kind of came through?
Sure. You know, I'm a Boardman guy, Boardman High School, Youngstown State, political science. And really when I first started getting involved was about 1990-91 with the college Republicans at Youngstown State University. We were down there.
As a fellow Youngstown State grad.
Yeah, right. I'm a little bit older. And,
29.
Yeah. 55. And
I was saying you were 29.
Oh, okay. No. Okay. And so we kind of started the college Republicans down there. We had a great group. Started getting involved with the local party, started the Young Republicans, probably about 92, 93, and then kind of just progressed through the ranks of the party. I had great mentors, and Dave Johnson, the chairman from Columbiana, Clarence Smith, our former chairman, and prominent business person. Mark Monroe was the previous chair.
So that was for a long time.
Mark was probably about 10 years.
Yeah.
Clarence was about 10 years. And so I was very fortunate to have really good mentors and people bring me through the ranks and show me how to do things. And, I always wanted to do party chair, run for it, but we had 6 kids. And, when you have kids, and you're finding that out now, it's tough to do stuff.
1-year-old,
right.
1.5-year-old.
Yeah. My oldest are 26 now, so it became a lot easier.
Maybe I can learn some things from you.
Really what you want to learn, it goes so fast. So
I'm learning that now.
Just take every moment, don't take it for granted, because it's that last time they walk, crawl, the last time they say, it goes fast. So,
but it's a spectacular moment.
It really is too, and I got to do it 6 times.
I can only imagine how that 6th time was. It's like just
yeah, right. So about 2018, Mark Monroe approached me and asked if I was still interested, and I said, well, with the kids being older, and I said I would be. And so, again, I've been very fortunate to have really good mentors over the last 30 years. So,
well, and it draws to that kind of the thing of the mentoring part and kind of working through where you want to go, no matter if you disagree or agree with things. And as we look at it, this is a huge year for politics now.
It is.
With everything going on, this may be one of the biggest moments, Democrat, Republican, in probably a long time.
Sure, and we can talk about how Mahoning County and the demographics and the numbers have changed so much since 2016. I came up in the time that we were only expected to get 35-36% of the vote out of Mahoning County. And if we got those numbers, the state party was happy. But now we're looking at the state party expects us to potentially carry the counties. And so it's an exciting time that we're finally starting to see this Mahoning County being a split county. It's not all blue like it used to be. Of course, it's not red, but it's shades of purple right now, and that's exciting.
And we look at that, and we'll get into that in a little bit about how it tied the 2020 election, and we look at it as overall when it comes to people running for office, what seems to be the message that from the county perspective and from the Republican side in general with all the candidates running, because there is a variety of people running now or up for re-election.
Well, yeah, you look at just about a month from now, we'll be voting on governor, the 5 executive offices of the state: governor, state auditor, state treasurer, attorney general, secretary of state. You have the congressional race. Mahoning County is now all Bill Johnson.
Correct. They merged. They basically, if you really want to look at it, they merged Congressman Tim Ryan's district and a little bit of extra and Bill Johnson's to make it like about a 4-hour trip from one end to another.
Yeah, about 4 hours, right. So we have our congressional race, of course, the Senate race with J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan, and that race is actually starting to look pretty good for us. I think we're going to, Ohio has turned red over the last few years. But you have some judicial races, you have the county commissioner's race, which we're really focused on this year. It's a race we haven't won in Mahoning County since 1960. So it's been 62 years since the local party has been able to win a commissioner spot. And so there's a lot of important races coming up from federal offices, state offices, all the way down to local offices.
So what is that message that you guys are sending out? Because as the last 3 or 4 months have been a very interesting, if you want to call it, news cycle, or things that have trended from Supreme Court all the way to any federal Congress or even Senate.
Sure, 6 months ago we were looking at this red wave, and everyone was predicting this red wave. Right now I still think we have the momentum. The Republicans across the country have the momentum. We have it in Ohio. And so a lot of national issues are coming into play. And the economy, inflation, the money that we're spending that we don't have, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars we're giving away. And so it's really, I think, a referendum on Joe Biden and the National Democrat platform and what they've been doing, not only economically, but socially as well. And we're finding that plays very well in Mahoning County.
And we look at, like you just mentioned, how do those federal and state issues affect Mahoning County? Because, like you mentioned earlier, Mahoning County demographics are very broad.
Correct.
And how do those affect? Like, people may like, oh, it doesn't affect me, or it may affect me. I'm seeing it, at least, and probably other people are seeing it. So how does that really affect Mahoning County?
Well, I think a lot of times it's pocketbook issues and how people are doing financially. We know the economy is not as well as it was just 2.5 years ago before Joe Biden took office. We know gas prices are up. We know grocery prices up. Everything's up. And we know people's salaries, their incomes aren't keeping up with the rate of inflation. So I think people are hurting. They're cutting back on what they can do with that within their income, eating out, going on vacations, traveling. And they say, and you've heard this, that races are decided on pocketbook issues. And we have that going for us right now. And so I think when it comes to those, it's turnout and who's going to turn out. And we're expecting a really good Republican turnout, just not in the state, but here locally as well. And if we get the turnout model that we think is coming, we're going to win Ohio. And I think we could win this in Mahoning County too, for the commissioner spot.
And that's a great turnaround. Where, what does that game plan look like? Because, like you said, the local issues drive local races.
Correct.
And you kind of look at that. So what does that message look like for the Republican Party for these types of a Mahoning County race? Sure.
We've just started a few weeks ago with the Get Out the Vote drive. We're targeting those hard Republicans that we need to turn out at 90-95% levels, especially in the areas of Mahoning County of like Greene, Beaver, Goshen, our deep red townships. And we're also targeting these middle, the swing voters that we think we can get talked over, the Trump voters, that we think we can keep them home, staying home with us. And so what we're seeing so far, we're getting really good responses with our direct mail pieces, with the door-to-door. We have radio going up, we have some print going up, billboards that have been up for a couple months already. And so I think the role of the local party is driving turnout in our direction. It's knocking those doors we need to knock on. It's hitting those doors and mailboxes with direct mail pieces. And I think that's a role of local parties, of getting the vote out that we need and beating the Democrats at that game of who's turning out. And we think we think we know it favors us at this point.
Well, I think that's a great follow-up that you've been in the party for about 3 years. You've been in the party a long time, but the chair is about 3 years. Do you feel that the party is where it should be, or do you think it should be moving more ahead than what it should be?
Well, we spent the first 3 years of my chairmanship really rebuilding our donor base. Over the last 3.5 years, we've we've raised over $800,000, which is really unheard of for a county like Mahoning, which was in a heavy Democrat area for really 90 years, Anthony. 1932, this county flipped, and it was blue all the way through 2020 when Trump finally broke through in the presidential. So we've done very well with rebuilding our donor base, and this year we started on the grassroots and trying to get the door knockers, the phone banking going. So we have a great team at the Mahoning County Republican headquarters. It's active, it's busy all day long. And so the momentum is with us, and we just have to take advantage of that momentum of making sure our volunteers are knocking the doors. And our goal is 50,000 doors by November 8th, and we're going to be close. And it's 50,000 phone calls, and we're going to be close. And so it's just, I've always said as party chair, everyone has something to give. And I've always used that term when I first ran for party chair. It's time, treasure, talent. And some people have that time to give, and they can knock doors, they can make phone calls, they can volunteer at the headquarters. Some people have a talent, the ladies that do the newsletter or put things together for us. And some people have the treasure to give. They don't want to knock doors, but they want to write checks to us. And I think we've done a really good job over the last 3.5 years of combining those three groups into a pretty cohesive group where we're all rowing in the same direction.
We know that we're looking at a variety of different things, subjects, things, and we moved to November. A lot of big races. We're less than a month away. Probably the biggest one is the open Senate seat.
Correct.
Is one of the big ones. Congressman Tim Ryan from the 13th District is facing off against J.D. Vance from Cincinnati, I think it is.
Originally Cincinnati. Yeah. Well, not originally Cincinnati, Middlefield, Ohio. Yeah. Everyone knows the story of the Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah.
Seen the movie, read the book.
What does that look like? Because it's now an open seat. There's no incumbent, so there's a big difference on what that looks like across the state. We understand that Ohio has been Democratic for a presidential election, has been Republican at different times. What does that look like in that race?
Since I came up, Ohio was that bellwether where, as Ohio goes, the presidential election goes, we've had our two Senate seats have been split for years. But just in the last 6 years, we've seen Ohio, it's really not a bellwether swing anymore. It's been dominated by Republicans at the state level, whether it be the governor, or executive offices, the Supreme Court. We've had supermajorities in the Ohio House, the Ohio Senate. And so Ohio isn't what it used to be when it came to that purple state. It's more red now. And what we're seeing in the polling right now, especially in internal polling, J.D. Vance is up. He's trending to win. We think we're going to keep it. We really do. Rob Portman, I think, did a pretty commendable job as senator. But J.D. Vance got off to a slow start, obviously. We had a brutal primary last May.
I think everyone has brutal primaries when you got 4 or 5, no matter if you're Democrat or Republican, you're just all...
But Tim Ryan did not have a brutal
He still had a person to run against.
Very token opposition. Where he didn't have to spend his $7-8 million, which he held on to.
Yeah, yes and no. I get it. Yeah,
he did.
He did. Right, but you have that brutal. No matter if you're running with 4 people in there or 2, you still got to run.
You still got to run, but he at least came out of his primary with a war chest. Where J.D. Vance or any of the candidates that would have came out of that primary were going to be broke. And so J.D. Vance had to spend the first 3-4 months of late spring and early summer raising money. And we're going to get out spending this race with the outside money included. But we have a better candidate. We have a record that we can run on with. Tim Ryan's done nothing for this area in 18 years. And of course, we have momentum with turnout in the state of Ohio. And, you know, back in the day, the Democrats could count on counties like Mahoning and Trumbull and Lorain and these blue-collar counties to deliver votes for them. They can't count on that anymore.
Well, and that's a great thing is in the 2020 election that the Republicans or the Republican candidate, President Trump, won, I think, like 81 or 82 counties in the state of Ohio, including Mahoning County, by only 2,000 or 3,000 votes. So what was the difference there? Because, like you said, this was a very Democratic county for decades. What do you think the difference was?
What we saw in 16, especially the 16 primary, that we knew Trump was going to do well, but we never expected 16,000 new Republicans to show up at the polls in March of 2016. It caught a lot of people off guard, that whole groundswell of support. He almost won in 2016 in Mahoning County, but he won Trumbull County. But I think the difference in 2020 was our local party outspent probably the local Democrats 8-1, and we did a lot of ground game in 2020. We used that Trump momentum, and we rode that wave financially, organizationally, with grassroots. And so going into this November, and we're talking about J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan still, where do the Democrats in Ohio get those base of votes that they used to have? And they've lost the blue-collar base. Our headquarters, we have union guys in there all the time, coming in to pick up signs for J.D. Vance, for even Mike DeWine and Frank LaRose, Bill Johnson. And so the days, I can remember back, again, over 30 years, the Democrats always could run the score up in the Lorains, the Trumbulls, the Mahonings, even Lake, Ashtabula, and all the way down the river.
Cuyahoga was over there.
Cuyahoga. Yeah. But they don't have that base anymore. And when we can win 81, 82 counties out of the 88, it's tough for the Democrats to make those votes back up. Where do they come from? They can still count on Cuyahoga, Lucas, which is Toledo, Franklin now is, is kind of blue, but in Athens County, which is what university's down there. Ohio University? No, it's one of those liberal college towns.
Well, I can't remember most. You got University, Miami University, Oxford, whatever.
Yeah, one of those down there. So we have such an advantage in momentum and registration and turnout that I really think that we're going to see a sweep here in November from Mike DeWine all the way down the tickets.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think that they just signed up to be Republicans just because of who was on the ticket? Because at the end of the day, they may go back and just say, "I'm an independent now. I'm not going to do that anymore." Would that be something that you guys would that happen?
Well, after 16, we weren't sure, and after 20, we still weren't sure. But we now have 6 years. This will be the 6th year of this trend. And it seems like it's holding for us, that the Trump voters are staying home and actually becoming conservatives, Republicans, and so we think it's a long-term trend of these Trump voters. And the national Democrats haven't helped themselves with their social issues and the wokeness and their economic policies of giveaways and the open borders. So I think a lot of these blue-collar workers and people from the Valley like us, they're now Republican. They now identify with our party. I think the Democrats have lost them, and we think it could be permanent.
Well, and we look at that as, I think the 2022 election here shortly will probably give us a benefit of, will those people stay home, as you said, to be on the Republican side, or will they come back to either being independent or being that Democrat. So right. we look at that because I think we look at there are some major issues in Mahoning County.
Correct.
Poverty, economics, the very disparity of that we try to fix.
Right. We lead the state in a lot of categories, and none of them are good.
And let's talk about that. What are some of the major issues in the county that you guys have that we can try and solve? How do we solve those problems?
I think it starts with economic development and jobs. And when you don't have that, you get failing schools, you get crime, you get drugs. So I think we need to attract more businesses into here. We have to have better policies. We have the highest tax rate in the state, which doesn't help. We have some of the highest crime in the state, which doesn't help to attract businesses. But you're also seeing areas like Lordstown starting to really explode.
Yeah. I mean, and you would not think Lordstown.
Correct.
But people don't understand it's their location that is permanent of what they can provide, and they already have the infrastructure there.
Correct.
And there's no additional monies that you have to actually put into as a Fortune 500 company coming in.
Yeah, and they're saying that Lordstown within the next 5 to 10 years could be just as big as what we saw in the heyday of GM.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's factoring into what's happening locally. But I think we need to change up who's in office here. We need to have more priority in bringing federal funds back here, state funds for economic development. And I think once we can solve that issue, it solves a lot of other issues.
It's almost like a domino effect.
I think it is. And you've been around and you've studied this, and it really comes down to opportunity and jobs and economic opportunities. And we don't have that, a lot goes wrong at that point.
I always like to ask the question, is it really the guy in the office? You know what I mean? Because as you know, people elected go in, come out, but you still have the employees that are doing the work. And I always kind of say is like, okay, I was at my former position at Youngstown State. I had like 7 presidents. So I've seen different things, but the work still got done. So is it really the person elected? Or I just like to ask that question because I don't know the answer.
I think it is. I think it is. If you look at the 4 years of Trump and where we went with the stock market and employment and opportunities within minority communities, and then you look at the 2 years of Joe Biden, what's happened since, I think it is a man in office. And you mentioned Youngstown State University. And how many presidents did you have?
I had 7, I think, starting from 2020, from Les Cochran to David Sweet to... maybe it wasn't 7, like 5 or 6. But
there's been a lot.
Well, and it's like the same at any, like especially here in the county, there are people will go, no matter if it's mayor, city councilman, or even a township trustee.
But you look at the job like Jim Tressel did at YSU, the money he brought in, the new donors, and the things that got done. I think it is a person. And I don't want to be overly critical, but you look at leadership in Youngstown, and can you really point to what Tito Brown or any of the council people have done and how they made the city better? But you look back when Jay Williams was there, I think Jay did make a difference. He had a plan, they had started implementing the plan. So I think it is the person in office. You look at Bill Johnson's record in Congress compared to Tim Ryan's record in Congress. Really, what has Tim Ryan done? But I think we can point to a series of economic development projects along the river that Bill Johnson was involved with. The money that Bill Johnson brings back to his district compared to what Tim Ryan brought back. So I think
it'd be interesting to see side by side on how much what projects over their 6, because you know how everyone likes to say, oh, I brought this much or I brought this much. What they did, and because you know every congressman's going to bring a variety of money back to their districts in a variety of different ways.
Correct.
Federal funding, state funding, like for example, federal funding for downtown Youngstown. Everyone knows the whole street is tore up.
Right. You look at a lot of stuff that's happening in downtown Youngstown. It wasn't Tim Ryan. Here's our former Congressman Jim Traffickin, brought the 2 courthouses. He brought the 7-Eleven connector. He brought Cavelli. Your congressman is supposed to bring back projects to their hometown, and it's hard to point to anything that Tim Ryan's brought back. And so I think it's the person in the office and the dedication they have and their ability to get things done. And Tim Ryan's failed that test time after time.
And the thing that we look at is, as we get closer, you're going to probably start seeing more TV ads, more radio ads.
Can we see any more than what we're seeing now?
Probably.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's a couple other ads in place of something where those will be thrown out by probably 2 weeks 3 weeks. Actually, what? I think we can. We already started October 1st, or maybe October 4th was early voting, and give or take. Don't quote us on that.
Right, but it started already. Right. So we're
and we look at that. You're on the board for elections.
Correct.
And there's been a big thing about mail-in ballots. Good thing, bad thing. Do you like mail-in ballots? What is your thought on that?
I like mail-in ballots. It's, we do about 30 to 35% of the total vote these days with our mail-in ballots, absentee ballots. Ohio has a good system of verifying who that person is.
A very secure system is what you're saying.
Ohio's a very secure system. I think we're ranked in the top 10 across the country of secure voting. Mm-hmm. It's easy to vote, hard to cheat in Ohio. We have a great absentee system. We're what's considered an early count state, so those absentees at 7:30 election night will be the first ones reported. Yeah. Unlike other states that.
I think Pennsylvania, you can't start till election day or the end to do.
Correct. It's 7:30.
I forget what it. Yeah, I remember reading something about that, and another state had that. That's why it took them days to count just normal ballots, mail-in ballots, absentee.
Where in Ohio, you're going to see on November 8th at 7:30, 7:45, close of polls at 7:30, 88 counties in Ohio will report those absentee results because we can start processing now if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's a good thing to be efficient.
It is. And then it gives opportunity for people that otherwise couldn't get to the polls or incapable of getting to the polls that opportunity to vote. You can come to the Board of Elections right now and vote. We have extended hours. We're going to have the next 2 weekends coming up, Saturdays and Sundays to vote. But it's secure, so everyone gets that opportunity. It's easy to vote in Ohio. Where other states, they don't have this no-fault absentee where anyone can vote. But it's secure, where you still have to, on your application, provide us with a driver's license number, or last 4 digits of Social Security so we can cross-check. And both sides have that equal opportunity to get people to vote absentee. Traditionally, Democrats vote early and Republicans vote election day. Heavier.
Are you trying to change that?
We are.
You're trying to do what they're doing and trying to do early voting, get people out as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, get your votes counted before election day, or at least your votes in, not counted, but your votes in. Mm-hmm. But it's a mindset too and this isn't Youngstown or Mahoning County. It's statewide. It's nationwide. It's a system. I can't explain it, but Democrats tend to vote earlier, and we tend to vote election.
When I read or watch a lot of different things, it's like, well, I understand that, and it's like, it's just one of those moments,
right?
That just you can't explain it. It's just
but every voter right now in Mahoning County in Ohio has an absentee ballot application sent to them. Mm-hmm. That the Secretary of State, the state of Ohio, mailed an application to every registered voter. Mm-hmm. So our job as a local party is to get our supporters, who we think are supporters, the leans, to get those applications in, to get them in, and so on election day we can concentrate on the ones still outstanding.
You talk about secure and knowing as your vote, we tell people, hey, get out the vote. One vote can make a difference, as we've seen in past elections, 1,000 votes, 1,500 votes. How secure is it for someone not knowing who I voted for? Because I always got the question from people, it's like, okay, I fill it in, put it through the machine, because if I'm not mistaken, you guys reference them for ballot counting. Can you explain? You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I think
you walk in, you get your ballot, they put a number on it, or there's a number on the ballot.
There's 2 stubs with numbers.
Yeah, correct. Right.
Right, but both those stubs come off before you cast that ballot. Okay. So once your ballot goes into that machine, that scanner, it's now anonymous.
Okay. I just always wanted to understand, just as a personal reference.
Yeah, there's no way to trace that ballot back at that point back to the voter. And that's what it should be, obviously. And so in Mahoning County, I've been with the Board of Elections for 24 years now as one of the directors. And back in 2011, I started in '99. We switched electronic voting, the old touchscreen voting.
I remember 2002. I remember those.
And we were the first county with touchscreen voting in the state of Ohio. But we realized by 2011 that voters didn't trust it, they didn't like it, the equipment was getting old, and we switched back to paper, which is a higher annual cost for us to print ballots. The voters like it.
Yeah, because you slide it right into the machine, you do it, it's all documented, it's scanned, it's counted, it's
now
done.
You have a hard copy.
Exactly, and you also have a receipt that I always see that prints
at the end of the night, we're going to print the totals from that precinct, and then, of course, our totals at the board have to match what was, from that location. So it's a really secure system. And then there's audits. About a month after that election, we're going to randomly pick 5% of the precincts, and we're going to hand count those to make sure it matches what we reported on our official counts.
Interesting.
A lot of checks and balances in the system.
And we hear a lot of that across the country. But it's still that anyone doesn't really, there's a lot of different audits in different areas.
We've also heard about a lot of misinformation out there since 2022.
Oh, exactly.
That we're constantly having to explain that's not actually what happens.
Right.
The whole allegations of election fraud, basically they've been proven false. And we've known that really since December of 2020, but there's still groups out there pushing this theory that the election was rigged. And we've had that,
And yeah, that's still going on.
It's still going on. It's still going on constantly.
And it's you're saying it's not true.
It's just not true.
But at the same time, you have a good secure system.
We do, and I think most of the states across the country have good secure systems. But any close race, there's always that. There's no perfect election. That you're voting, let's say in Mahoning County presidential, 120,000 people. We employ over 1,000 people election day twice a year to count those, get those voters processed. There's always some issues out there, but the allegations of election fraud have been debunked. It's not there. We have a good count in Ohio, but I think there's a clarification. There's voter fraud out there. I think there's organizations out there doing things they shouldn't do. There's voters out there, obviously, across the country doing things they shouldn't do. But that's voter fraud. That's not election fraud. We have election companies and election officials conspiring to affect votes. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah. And we look at that as that, like you said, 120,000. How many are registered in Mahoning County?
About 164,000 right now.
Out of, I think there's about 260.
Is there?
1,000 people, kids, children, everything.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. What do you think the turnout will be this November?
We're predicting about 55-56%, which is kind of in line with past governor's elections. What we're seeing from the early vote and applications, I think we'll be right in that area.
It'll be interesting because was it Iowa that just had a vote that they had like 80%. It was it was on the I don't want to get into semantic. It was about the abortion law.
Okay.
I think they had like
Iowa, was it Missouri?
It was one of those states. I forget. Yeah. But it was like 80%.
Correct.
Turnout, and that they're like.
Where'd
it come from? Because normally they measured it. So it'll be interesting to see how everything presides, especially what's been going on the last 90 days.
Correct. But I don't see a huge influx of new voters at this point in Ohio or in Mahoning County. So we're looking at a turnout model that kind of is in line with past governor's elections. Any
predictions for this November?
Well, as party chair, not as a board of election official, because we kind of crossed paths. I have to watch because
that's fine.
8 to 4:30, we're bipartisan. We work together as Democrats and Republicans count the vote. But I guess I'm here as party chairman first.
But it was good to get some explanation on the election side so people understand the process.
Correct. Right.
And it's good education for them.
Yeah. And Ohio's, I guess, some people don't understand you can serve both roles.
Correct.
Right. But if my predictions, I think the Republicans are going to sweep Ohio. We're going to win all 5 executives. We're going to win the 3 Supreme Court justices. J.D. Vance is going to win. Bill Johnson's going to win. And I think we're going to win that commissioner spot for the first time since 1960.
And who's running in the commissioners?
It's actually Gino DeFabio.
Okay.
Great candidate. He's blue-collar truck driver. run a good campaign. We've raised a lot of money for
and
him.
He's
running against Carol Remedios,
who's the incumbent,
who we say is a lifetime politician.
Okay.
She's been in government since 1970. I know her. She's a good person, but
great lady.
Right. But I think it's time that we have a change in Mahoning County. We actually have a two-party system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Gino brings, and I think Gino brings a different perspective, and I think we actually have a legitimate shot this time. We're going to pull this off.
I appreciate your time.
Oh, anytime. I was so glad to be on.
I know. We've been trying to get this. Let's kind of go a different route here.
Okay.
At the end of each show, I like to talk about personal with my guests and kind of have a couple questions for you. And just, it could be personal or professional,
Sure.
whatever that be. What do you think your best accomplishment is?
As party chair?
No, it could be anything, personal or professional. It could be family. It could be whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. It's your own.
As accomplishment, of course, I have 6 kids. We have twins, a single, twins, and a single. So 3 boys, 3 girls. And you look back, and it's really family first.
Mm-hmm.
Take the politics to job, but at the end of the day, it's family. And so having 6 great kids in this environment today, I think it's just an accomplishment itself, but it's something you just had a little one, and you understand that it's something special about it.
Oh, it's very special,
Yeah.
especially when she smacks you in the face.
Yeah.
I'm up, and with this big old smile on their face. So yeah, I get it. What's your best memory?
Well, let me split that. My best political memory?
Oh boy, this ought to be fun.
No,
good. I like to hear it.
My dad was a school teacher in Youngstown, and
City of Youngstown.
Yeah, City of Youngstown. And I can remember I was 10 years old, and we'd watch the news together. We'd watch the political conventions together. And in 1976, sitting with my dad in our living room, I was 10 years old, and watching the Republican convention in Kansas City. And I remember Ronald Reagan getting up to speak. And we were watching ABC News. I know that because at the end of Reagan's speech, I think it was Frank Reynolds or Frank Reynolds. Dean is his son. So
Yeah.
Frank Reynolds was the anchor. And I remember him saying, the delegates at the convention probably picked the wrong man tonight because Gerald Ford had taken it in 1976.
Mm-hmm.
And so from 1976, I remember that so vividly. And that's what turned me Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing Ronald Reagan in 1976. So my favorite memory of politics is that point in time knowing I like this guy. I'm not even sure why I liked him, I just liked him. So in 1980, in government class, we had to pick a presidential candidate. So I picked Reagan and wrote my paper on Reagan. And in 84, I was only 17, but I worked the polls for Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
So it all started, that memory, in 1976, sitting with my father on the couch watching that convention. So that's my favorite political memory because from that led to everything else.
You lead to where you are today.
Yeah, maybe I should regret that. Right.
Well, it was funny on Reagan. I think this is who it was. I remember Don Wrinkle just at his inaugural. I think it was inaugural. Nancy and that he did a skit, and Don Wrinkle is one of the funniest men alive with Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And I remember that 5-minute skit, and I bought YouTube. Okay, I can watch.
I'll have to go back and watch it today.
Oh, it's 5 minutes of just Don Wrinkle being Don Wrinkle and in that whole area.
Don Rickles.
Wrinkles, yeah, sorry, Wrinkle.
Right. No, it's okay. You can edit that out.
I don't need to edit that out.
That goes back 40 years ago, right? Don Rickles.
And we look at that. So yeah, that's a memory for me because I was in the comedy business for a long time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was a booking manager for the old Funny Farm when it was at the Metroplex, right? Long time ago, 15 years ago. And we look at that. Who's your role model?
Well, personally, it's my father. My father turned 93 this year. They've been married 60 years.
God bless him.
Still going strong. I mean, he's probably in better shape than I am, which I'm not sure if that says anything, but he is. He's 93 and still. So my role models are obviously my father. Politically, it's guys like Dave Johnson, Clarence Smith, and Mark Monroe who brought me into politics. Met a lot of cool people over the years, presidents and senators, because of those 3. So I guess there's a personal role model and then there's like a political role model, and there'd be the local guys that have helped me out, and I hope in the future I can help some other young guy out like they helped me out. And I guess that would be my answer.
Okay. In my last question, I love to hear this because I think this says a lot about us as an individual. If there was one person you'd want to meet, past or present, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's a good one. It is.
I pride myself in questions that I think people would love to know.
I think it would have to be biblical.
It does.
I think it would not. I'd like to be around it and meet the time of the 12 disciples and meet them. But I think currently it'd be Ronald Reagan, which I never got a chance to meet. Right.
Well, I've had people go that far back. I mean, they've gone that far, so each person's different.
Yeah.
But that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So
that's a tough one because there's so many different answers you could give. Because I was a history major too.
I love history. So
and boy, you can go back to our founding fathers. I mean,
sit in the room where they signed the Declaration of Independence.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Where John Hancock signed his big name.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
So there's so many different answers as a political science major and a history major that you could give because I don't know if there's one answer I could actually just nail down.
Hey, never know.
You don't.
Tom, I appreciate you taking time.
You, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. In a couple of weeks, we'll talk about the results.
Yeah, we'll see what happened.
Yeah. Thank
you everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed a great sit back, laid back conversation with Tom, the chair of the Republican Party of Mahoning County. We hope you can join us for more podcast shows. For news, events, and other things, go to anthonyvspano.com. Have a great night, everyone.